Polo GTI, the John Rambo of the cities. Finally cracking the 200 horsepower border, DSG, and less than 1,400 kilograms. Is that the recipe for fighting the OPCs and muscle dwarfs? Can it maybe scare his bigger brother, the Golf GTI? Or is the GTI logo just a badge on the back of the harmless?
Drinking lots of alcohol and partying, this is the first thing that you think of when you hear Mallorca, the party island. Mostly it's the younger audience, of course, but even mature people love to party here on that island in summertime. Now it's not summertime, as you can see, the weather isn't that fine, but it's still a beautiful island where we're gonna take you for a drive around with the brand new Polo GTI in its 6th generation. I'm Chris, this is Mania. Hi and welcome. It's the same with the Polo like with Mallorca, actually. More for the younger audience, but even mature people love to drive it, because I see some of them driving around with these little cars, but now it's even more like that because it got bigger. So the Polo is now bigger, 10 centimeters longer, even a bit wider, and we're gonna see in detail what kind of benefit that brings. But first, let's start with the looks, especially with the front view. Every car maker does it the same way. If something, a concept, works really well, don't change it that much. And this is exactly what Volkswagen did, and they did it right, because the Polo is still a Polo from the front view, but now with full LED headlights. And that's a big advantage because of the selective beam and everything that full LED headlights give you. It's not just the looks, it's also the functionality. And please do me a favor, if you don't get yourself anything from the option list, but please get the full LED headlights, because it's not standard. It's not standard, and if you don't do that cross on the option list, you're going to get halogen lights, and please, halogen lights with the GTI, not good, really not good. So get these full LED headlights and selective beam, and you're going to be really happy. You can see the red accents, typically GTI, the 3 letters showing in the rear mirror. Have some respect, and that nice grey color. It's a good color for everyone who loves to have sportiness and elegance at the same time. You can get it in that grey, white, red, black and blue, depending on your taste, but still with these red accents. So of course you can see the red accents better on a black, grey and white car than on a red car. That's why I chose this one here for that test. And it's the first time that the GTI is coming along with 18-inch rims. That used to be on the wish list of many Polo GTI owners, because of course it looks a lot better. Standard is still 17, but if you'd like to have 18, you can get it from the option list. These are the 18-inch rims in the typical GTI style. Red brake calipers, you can't miss them of course. The only thing I'm missing is the GTI writings on the brake calipers, just like with the Golf R, who has an R. But that's moaning on a high level, you can live with that. And of course the GTI logo with the red background and the tinted back windows, also important, please, for the looks, just for the looks. And now we will get to an open secret, just to find out what kind of benefit do we have with these 10 centimeters that the Polo is longer now. I tell you, we get a trunk that's not possible to open because it's always closing itself automatically. Here it is, 350 liters of boot space instead of 280 like it used to be with the previous Polo. That's 25% more boot space, and like that maybe you could have longer trips finally now. With the Polo it's not necessary to buy the Golf, you pay less money, and we have the Polo typical backlights again here, just to stay faithful to the form and to the image that the Polo has. And even if you don't get the headlights LED, you still get LED backlights, but that's halogen. always, independently from what you order. And the exhaust pipes, not really exaggerated, but it's fine like that. The Polo doesn't pretend to be more than it is and has kind of a respect distance to the Golf, which has the exhaust pipe on the left and the right. And if you use the reverse gear and if you order the rear view camera, this flops like that, and the rear view camera comes out here and is being protected against dirt and any kind of damage. So altogether, I think the Polo, with that little spoiler lip kept in black and everything just like it is, look at that, with these nice LED accent strips, I love it. It's a small little tiny car that comes along with 200 horsepower. We're going to talk about that performance data more in detail when we drive it. And now the last thing that I'm really curious about is the space on the back seat. Me, with 6'2", adult man, how do I fit behind myself on the back seats? And this is what we're going to be checking out right now. So 10 centimeters more space, and wow, you can really see that. You can really see that. Just take a look at that space between my knees and the front seat, which got set to my size, and I'm so surprised that's more space than in a 1 Series BMW. Really, so I'm surprised. I thought, I have to say, well, it's enough space, but not for 400 or 500 kilometer trips, but I could even sit here for longer trips because my knees are not even touching the front seat. And how is it with the headroom? Well, even given as much as on the front seat, almost. So nothing is bothering. It's comfortable, it's beautiful with that checked patterns. So I'm really surprised by the space that the Polo offers now. And I think you can confidently take the Polo instead of the Golf if you're not really a family of 3 or 4, because I mean, an adult person 6'2" can easily fit on these back seats. Thumbs up for the Volkswagen Polo's new space architecture. So the only thing surprising here today is the weather in Mallorca, because you might think that we're in Sweden, but we're not, and the rest isn't really surprising. So everything that you know from a Volkswagen, thanks the modular system. Of course, that's an advantage for everyone coming from a Volkswagen. Then you don't have to learn new things. So if you're coming from the newer Volkswagens where you have these digital things, but at the same time, you could say that there is nothing new expecting you. Maybe if you were looking forward to get to know some new things, this is everything what the Polo already offers, as the Polo as itself has been on the market now quite for a while. But even in a GTI, you have the center screen. This is an 8.1-inch nav. It's the biggest option that you have. It's not the same like in the Golf. In the Golf, it's a 9.2-inch, but the rest is the same. The whole functionality, it has that gesture control, so when you get closer to the screen, you can see with my finger, and then you have several options. And if you get away with your hands, then it blends it out, so you have a full map on the screen. Even if it's not the state-of-the-art nav in the automobile industry, because still BMW is leading, I'm not comparing it to BMW because it's a price class higher, but still you can feel here, especially driving places that you don't know, like here in Mallorca sometimes, or you have to watch really carefully to see which street is which street. But the rest, so the in-depth setting possibilities are really impressive. You have everything that you need. It's not less than in the BMW. You can set a lot, and the screen is nice big, so it's not necessary to have it bigger here. If you might ask why, it's not the same like in the Golf. And then we have the digital instruments expecting you here, the digital dashboard. And always when I'm talking about digital instruments, I recommend you to take them if you have the choice between analog and digital. You have many setting possibilities. It's a lot more modern. It even gives you some security aspects, like you can have the nav here in the middle. You can even switch that whole screen into a nav map, but then you don't have it here on that screen. But that's something that you can live with. And except that audio, telephone, lap timer if you drive on the racetrack, what we're going to be doing, and then things like fuel consumption average, rest range, average speed, oil temperature, trip, fuel consumption per hour, many things that you can see here, and it's a nice thing to have, definitely. And yeah, it's exactly the same like in the T-Roc, and that brings me to the next point. Everything about here is something that you already know from the T-Roc. Maybe you know my review about the Volkswagen T-Roc. It's exactly everything the same as the Polo is the base for the T-Roc, so the trims, the position of the nav, and everything, the buttons, it's exactly the same. And this is kind of nice because now you have the choice to get aluminium trims, and this is an advantage that the T-Roc, for example, doesn't offer. And maybe for the mature audience buying that car, this might be more interesting than the playful colors, though I have to say that this red color is really charming, so I adore it, because it's not that punch in the face Ferrari red, it's a matte red color, and somehow it's, you know, it's elegant and sporty at the same time. And of course you can combine, it's a good combination between the interior trims being red, just like the GTI logo, and the stripes in the seats with these checked patterns that we know from the GTIs. So maybe this would be the color that I choose, but just take a look at the option list and choose your perfect color. You have several colors that you can choose from, and aluminium if you'd like to. Last thing to say before we drive it, the seats with these, as I have already mentioned, checked patterns, the typical GTI patterns, having really nice lateral support. You notice that immediately when you get in the car, especially here, you've got lots of lateral support, and this is something that I love. I feel nice just for you to compare it. Maybe you're smaller or taller. I'm 6'2". I have plenty of headroom. My shoulders are free, so it's not tight or something like that. It feels nice, and the materials touching them is also nice, and it's not natural in that car class. And yeah, not to forget about the wireless charging possibility for your cell phone. You just put it here and it starts charging your phone, if you have that option for your cell phone, but the new ones have it. Well, let's now go to the roads here in Mallorca and try out how its behavior is on the roads with these 200 horsepower. GTI, that name is a brand, and has been for more than 40 years now. And to be honest, you might not believe it now, but this car to me is more charming than a Golf GTI. And I tell you why. Because the name GTI is not being related that much to the Polo, more to the Golf, because this is the car where that name was invented to. And this small car is just a bit more special of driving it and knowing that it's a GTI. Same with the Lupo GTI. This is, in my eyes, the car, the Volkswagen with the biggest cult status of all Volkswagens, because it's that much special, because you don't expect a car like that to be a GTI. The Polo swims against the current, while every other car maker does downsizing. Volkswagen does it the other way. Just to do a little flashback with the Polo, in 2010, 1.4 litre 4-cylinder TSI with 180 horsepower, and then there was a facelift in 2014 with 192 horsepower and 1.8 litre, and now it's a 2-litre 4-cylinder. And of course, you might expect that you have more torque and a lot more power. It's basically just 8 horsepower more and the same torque. But having more displacement might be maybe an advantage for having a smoother driving. Now, of course, not in the sport mode as we're driving that road upwards, but it's a bit smoother than the previous one. 192 horsepower used to be now 200. It's not a big jump, especially regarding the fact that this is a totally new model with a 200 horsepower and 320 Newton meters. The performance is also the same. It's 6.7 seconds from 0 to 100, so 0 to 62 miles an hour. And maybe you think I'm lying, but I'm not. It feels as fast as the Golf GTI does somehow. And that's because it has less weight and the body of the car is smaller. And of course, that's an advantage for hitting it around the corners, just like here on these curvy, amazingly curvy pass roads in Mallorca. I just have to be careful because unexpectedly we have just 5 degrees and I don't want to slide down the hill, but it's really stiff with the suspension and everything, so you're not missing anything in the Polo compared to the Golf, which has 30 horsepower more, or 45 if you take the performance version. And it's quick, and you can definitely feel the advantage of the smaller body of the car when driving it around the corners, just like here. Wow. So I have to be honest, you're not expected to be that quick and sharp.
For the moment, it seems that there isn't that much what the new Polo has ahead of the competition compared to the old GTI. But don't forget the increased space, from now only available as a 5-door version, and the totally new digital interior. But there is also something in performance that makes the new GTI better that you only see in detail.
Now they just released the full torque of 320 Newton meters, because until now the Polo used to have 250 Newton meters, limited to 250 Newton meters if you bought the automatic transmission. Only the manual transmission used to have, or has, 320 Newton meters.
That doesn't help at the off-the-line acceleration. It's the same like the old GTI, but it's punchier at higher speeds. The chassis is really well adjusted, very stiff and still smooth over potholes, just like his big brothers' the Golf 7 GTIs. Anyway, you have 2 options for the suspension. The standard suspension, the sports suspension, which makes it 15mm lower than the normal Polo, and the optional Sports Select suspension with adaptive dampers.
Let's now have the last chapter before we go to the racetrack, and it's the question what kind of security helpers we have. I think still mostly, even if it's a GTI, you're going to be driving in the city traffic just like we do it now, and it's nice to have security helpers, and we again have the benefit of the modular system, so that almost everything that you have in a Golf you also have it in a Polo, starting with the front assist being standard, the emergency brake assist and pedestrian detection. So this is really helpful in cities where maybe people are running in front of the car that you might have not expected because you couldn't see them. This is really helpful. Then of course you have the things like, just you do the crosses on the option list or you don't. You can get the active cruise control maybe. This is one thing, making bigger trips more comfortable, of course. The parking pilot, I wouldn't take it, but if you got used to the previous Polo, which is smaller, then it might be helpful. One thing that I wouldn't leave away is the rear view camera flopping out of the Volkswagen logo. That's a nice thing. And at the same time, even the blind spot warning. I don't know why it's still not a standard European or worldwide standard of having blind spot warning. Here you have it, and it's nice to have it, and this is the advantages of the modular systems that you have in the Volkswagen family. Okay friends, this is now the time to check out the Polo GTI on the racetrack here in Mallorca, and I can't promise that this camera will stay straight, but we're gonna give it a try, and you're gonna see everything from that camera as well and from this here, so you have different perspectives, and let's see what this car can do, what we haven't tried on public roads, of course. So I have already driven that car around that circuit here, and what I immediately recognized is that it goes unexpectedly forward. It's a lot faster than you expect 200 horsepower to be, so it's a lot faster than you think. The DSG sometimes needs a little time to think, but except that, especially the differential and the front wheels does a really good work. So there you can see that there is worlds between a front wheel driven car without a differential and with a differential. It pulls you to the inner side of the curve, and like that you don't have that typical front wheel drive understeering, and that's a huge advantage when you drive serpentines or pass roads or a racetrack. This is a huge advantage. And look, so it goes 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120. It's a track with not so many straights. It's more curvy, but I think this is nice to know and nice to have, because straight driving, everyone can do that. But this here is fantastic. So that little car is a racing car, a small racing car. And the sound, just hear the sound. Yes, man. Wow. So that definitely doesn't feel like 200 horsepower. Take a look at that, how it sticks to the ground. Wow. I'm really impressed by this little car. A collision warner, because a Golf R is driving in front of us. And like that, of course. It does warn us. It's a bit annoying on a racetrack, but I haven't switched it off. So the differential does an amazing, and these brakes, really, this is something what I have already discovered on the Golf 7 facelift GTI Performance, that the brakes are brutal. They're brutally hitting, and even after 10 rounds here on that track, it's still reliable, and that's the word. The only thing is, if you drive really tight corners, just like here now maybe, the ESP does regulate, but I have to be honest, I haven't switched off the ESP because Volkswagen doesn't allow you that on a racetrack, just because I have the maximum security or safety. That's a little damn racing car. It really makes more fun than a Golf GTI, I have to be honest. Okay, I haven't driven the GTI Performance maybe on a track like that, but this car is smaller, and like that it feels faster and more radical. The brakes, take a look at that. I've hit the brakes many times now, and they still as at the beginning, so that's amazing. Now the ESP, just taking back a little bit the power. And these tight corners like that one here, you've got the ESP definitely regulating. It's just the really tight corners where it does take back the power a bit, but the differential does an amazingly good work. Of course, it's hard to catch up with the all-wheel driven Golf R facelift, 310 horsepower, 110 horsepower more than we have, and an all-wheel drive, but besides that, there is nothing to complain about because we're sitting in a Polo. Please don't forget about that. Do you hear that sound? It sounds like a racing car, so really amazing. Of course, we've got some sound composing, but don't give a damn. I mean, that's the fun about it, and it shoots out of the exhaust these typical DSG shots, what many complain about, that the Golf 7 facelift GTI doesn't have anymore. This one has it. Even if you drive it softer, you've got these shots out of the exhaust, and that makes fun, man. That makes fun listening to that. Sometimes the DSG needs a second to recognize that you are accelerating out of the curve, so at the exit of the curve. but this is a little bit of a second, but I think you're even not going to be faster with a manual transmission, even if there was a manual transmission. It's coming up in 2018, because you can't shift that fast like the DSG can, even if it takes some little time to shift back. You can control a bit better with a manual transmission, but you can really feel the differential working, because it's pulling the wheels into the inside of the curves. It's amazing, really. And how it goes on a straight line, I would have never expected this little car to be that fast. So don't you underrate it. If you drive anything else in that class and you see it in the rear mirror, that car is a GTI. So the name is not just a name. ESP regulating again, but here, so always depends on how you turning the steering wheel. Take a look how we are sticking to the Golf R in a curve with that differential. Really, I'm so damn impressed. Well, it's time for a conclusion about the Polo GTI. Now the last part here in Mallorca really surprised me, because I would have never expected that little car to be that fast on a circuit. It's not just the feeling that you have, it's even the maximum that you can take out, as you can see in the curves when you drive them to the maximum, that the car sticks to the ground like, well, I don't even know, like a railway. And there is no understeering, though it's a front-wheel driven car with 200 horsepower to the front wheels. And that's a word. So I'm really surprised, impressed, and I can recommend you to get yourself that car if you are looking for a little car that surprises the people, because it's not that, so from the looks it's not that exaggerated. That's an advantage. And like that you can surprise a lot from in the rear mirror, you know, the middle class limousines. And fuel consumption average is okay. You can drive it with less than 7 litres if you want to. Even 9 up to 10 litres are easily possible, like that of course. But the oil temperature, so it hasn't got heated up that much, 108 degrees. The brakes are something that are amazing, because even after, I mean, slowly it's 15 rounds on that circuit, the brakes are still the same. They're not spongy. It's a good work. So if you think that Volkswagen just put the name GTI behind the Polo, oh no, really not. And it's as much a GTI as the Golf is. Of course, it doesn't have the 7-speed dual clutch automatic transmission. It has a 6-speed transmission, 320 Newton meters, especially compared to the previous Polo with only 8 horsepower less, but 70 Newton meters less, because that one got limited with the DSG. So it's really, it's a fantastic work, that little car. It makes fun. Start at 23,750 euros, and you have really lots of things as a standard in that car, so you don't even have to make that much crosses on the option list. But I think you get a little bit above 30,000 euros in the end, but it's totally okay for a car that has so much of helpers, security helpers, options. Please don't forget to get yourself the full LED headlights, the tinted windows, but many things are standard, so you can get it as it is. Choose the color of your choice. I'm Chris. Thank you very much for being with me here in Mallorca. Please don't forget to subscribe on my channel. Leave me comments how you like it, and then see you next time in the next video. Thank you very much.